Let's talk about likelihood ratio of a test. To understand likelihood ratio, let's take an example, a hypothetical scenario. Let's suppose a company has developed a new test called, let's say, test X, and the company says that our test is better than pap smear in terms of detecting cervical cancer in its early stage. So our test should be promoted. They are claiming that, right? They have mentioned in their advertisement that the positive likelihood ratio of their test is 5 and negative likelihood ratio of their test is 0.2. 5 and 0.2. Remember, positive likelihood ratio of the test is 5 and negative likelihood ratio is 0.2. Compared to pap smear, let's say positive likelihood ratio of pap smear is 2 and negative likelihood ratio is 0.5, right? So with this data, can you say that test X is superior to pap smear? Yes, with this data we can say, because positive likelihood ratio is 5, it means that if the test comes positive, it increases the probability of disease by 30%, compared to only positive likelihood ratio 2 in pap smear, in which the probability of disease will increase only by 15% if the test comes positive. Similarly, if you see negative likelihood ratio, the company is claiming that test X has negative likelihood ratio 0.2 compared to negative likelihood ratio of 0.5 in pap smear. So negative likelihood ratio of this new test is low. So if this test comes negative, then there is 30% chance that disease is negative. There is no cervical cancer. But if you compare in pap smear, if this test comes negative, it only decreases chance by 15%. So in terms of positive likelihood ratio and negative likelihood ratio, this test X is better than pap smear. Let's understand in depth about this likelihood ratio. What is positive likelihood ratio? So positive likelihood ratio of a test means that among the diseased population, how much came positive in test. So how much tested positive in diseased population compared to healthy population who tested positive, right? That is positive likelihood ratio. And what is negative likelihood ratio? Among diseased population, how much tested negative compared to healthy population who tested negative. That is the definition of positive and negative likelihood ratio. So let's say if positive likelihood ratio is high, it means that sensitivity of the test will be high, right? Positive likelihood ratio of this test X is high compared to positive likelihood ratio of pap smear. So it means that sensitivity of this test X is higher compared to sensitivity of pap smear. What is sensitivity? If sensitivity is higher, it means that it won't miss disease. It won't miss disease in the community. It will even pick up the false positive, but it won't miss the disease, right? That is the concept of sensitivity. So if sensitivity is higher, it means it helps to rule out disease. It won't miss disease in the community, even though it will pick up more false positive. And what is positive likelihood ratio? It is test being positive among diseased population to test being positive among healthy population. So if sensitivity is higher, positive likelihood ratio will also be higher. There is positive correlation between sensitivity and positive likelihood ratio. But if you see the correlation of negative likelihood ratio and sensitivity, there is inverse correlation. As negative likelihood ratio increases, sensitivity decreases, right? So let's recall that the previous example of the test X, where the negative likelihood ratio was 0.2, right? So there was low negative likelihood ratio. It means that sensitivity will be high in that case, right? So even if you see the formula, like positive likelihood ratio is equal to sensitivity by 1 minus specificity. So positive likelihood ratio is directly correlated with sensitivity, and negative likelihood ratio is equal to 1 minus sensitivity divided by specificity. So it is negatively correlated with sensitivity. So if negative likelihood ratio is low, it means that that test has high sensitivity. We will discuss this in more detail by further illustration in another video.